Hi, this is John from Sonic Drive Studio. Today I want to show you how I dial in my 8-string guitar tones with my Axe FX. If you don't own an Axe FX, don't worry, the tips I'll be giving can also be applied to other modelers and real amps. So I'll be using my Ibanez M80M today. I've owned a lot of 8 strings in the past, and this guitar is the best by far to achieve really tight and clear 8-string guitar tones. It's a pretty unique guitar. It has a 29.4-inch scale length, so the scale is really long. This helps to keep the strings tight, and that's why it sounds so clear. It has an ash body, a maple neck with a rosewood fretboard. It has a Lundgren pickup in it, just like Meshuggah uses. Of course, Meshuggah are the pioneers when it comes to 8-string guitar tones, so they're a huge influence in that area, of course. I have mine tuned down to F, so 1/2 step down, and I'm using elixir strings. The top F string is a 70 bass string. The second string is a 52 for the B flat. The rest is just a standard 9-gauge set. So let me open Axe Edit here. I got a clean patch set up. The amp that I usually like to use is a Mesa Boogie rectifier, basically. We're going to use Recto 2 Red Modern. So for any other modeler, just pick an amp that sounds close to a rectifier. It has to have big lows, and it has to sound a little bit scooped, for my taste anyway. Let's set up the noise gate as well, because we're definitely going to need that. I have mine set to classic, which I prefer. I always set the attack and release at the quickest. We don't want any noise. Okay. Of course, we're going to need a cab. For now, I'm just going to select one real quick. As you can see, I have a lot of Ownhammer IRs. I love Ownhammer. I'm going to start with this one, but we're going to scroll through some other cabs when we get the tones right. Now, there are a couple of things that I always do in the cab block. I'm going to show you right now. I like to turn up the motor drive a little bit. It adds a little bit of compression. So it sounds a little bit warmer when you have the motor drive set. I just like the sound. You can experiment. You can turn it up all the way so you can really hear what it does. It simulates the speaker being driven. So when you turn your amp up really loud, this is what it simulates. I like to set the low cut at around 60 to 70 hertz to begin with. But later I'll turn it up a bit more probably. And in the mix, I'll turn it up even more. But I like to track my guitars with more low end because it just feels better. Just going to leave the high cut where it is now. This all depends on the cabinet that I'm going to use. I'm not using the room here. I'm going to use a reverb block to add a little bit of room, which I always do. I always use Recording Studio C. It sounds really natural to me. Let's set the quality to high. I usually turn the decay down a little bit to 1 second. We don't want the room to sound too obvious. I'm going to turn the mix down to 10% also. Maybe a bit lower even. This works very well. So let's take a listen to how the amp block sounds now without any tweaking. It's definitely not there yet. This guitar sounds very clear and open by itself, but it still needs work. It sounds too muddy, and there isn't enough definition. It may be good for the regular 6-string strings, so the higher E string. But that's not what we're going for today, so we're going to have to adjust this. I usually like to turn the master volume down a bit till about 2.5. You can experiment with this, of course. I'm going to turn the level up a bit more to compensate. I almost always like a bit more presence on the recto models, so I'm going to turn this up a little bit. Now, before we're going to go any further in the amp block, there's something very important that we're going to need to add, which is the drive block. I'm going to add this right here. For 8-string tones, I always use the Tube Screamer model. And this is going to add a lot to the clarity of the sound. I'm going to take away some mud here and make sure that the guitar sounds a bit more bright and that there's more mid-range focus. First of all, we're going to turn the drive all the way down because there's enough drive in the amp. Then we're going to turn up the level somewhat, almost all the way. Now this is also very important, the tone knob. I'm going to turn this up all the way to help bring out the clarity in the low notes. Check out what this does. Now we're really getting there. There's one more thing that I like to do in the drive block, and that is to take out some bass. We're going to take out about 4 dB to start with. Let's see how that sounds. That sounds just about right to me. So by doing this, we're making the guitar even more clear, but there's still some beef there. Okay, that's about it for the drive block. Now let's go back to the amp block and see if we have to do any more tweaking. I think there's a bit too much drive. I'm going to take some of that out. That sounds good to me. The bass sounds good where it is. The mid sound good where it is. I like the treble right here with this cab. Presence sounds fine. Sometimes cabs have a big low resonant peak, and you can dial that back in the speaker area here. I might do that with some speakers that we're going to audition in a minute if there's too much low end. Not every IR is going to work perfectly with those amp settings, so every IR may need some adjustment to sound perfect. Let's turn the level down a little bit still. Let's also revisit the cab block to see if we need to do any more adjustments. Turn this up a little bit more to about 80 hertz, 81 hertz. Going to do a high cut. I usually do this anyway at about 12K, sometimes even lower. This is a good place to start. Oh, and one thing that I forgot is that I always use the preamp as well. It adds a very subtle amount of color. Just a little bit of drive and saturation. You probably won't notice this a whole lot. This EQ here is handy for broad shaping, but we don't need it right now. Now let's check out the cabs. So the first cab that I'm going to try is the Ownhammer Marshall 66 2x12. It's an insanely versatile package. with about 64 different speaker types, as you can see here. Got a lot of different stuff, as well as mixes, custom mixes made by Ownhammer for different genres. They work well for, you know, plug and play type stuff. We got a gent here, chunk, green, modern, metal, all the good stuff. Let's take a look at the Ownhammer page real quick. So this is the cab. So it's a big 2x12 cab. It looks more like a 4x12, which is why it sounds a bit bigger than you would expect of a 2x12 cab. Over here you can see all the different mic selections and mixes that we have, and other info. If you're looking for a good versatile package with a lot of options, this is the one to get basically, and it's really cheap. Check it out. First off, I'd like to try the Lynchback. I like that one. It works well for 8-string guitars often. Let's see how that sounds. I really dig that one. The mid-range is nice. It has a little bit of a 3D in the room type sound going on, which I like. Now, of course, we're going to have to check out the gent mix, obviously. Let's give this a go. Yeah, it sounds really genty. If I were to use this cab, I would dial in the amp block a little bit different, maybe cut some treble, add some beef in the mids and lows, but that would work really well. Since we're making metal here, we should also check out the metal mix. Let's give this a go. I'm also digging that one. Sounds great and aggressive, just like you'd expect. Now, this one is quite interesting. It's the Sun speaker from the Sun cab. I'm curious to see how this one sounds. I love the mid-range on that one, and the low end is kind of huge. This is a good example of a cab where I would check out the speaker section here and lower the low resonance a little bit. Let's see how that sounds with this speaker. Yeah, with those little tweaks, this speaker sounds really good too. It's cool. And finally, the holy grail of rock speakers, the V30. There's a couple different options here, as you can see. We have the Chinese, both 8 and 16 ohm versions. We have the English ones, also 8 and 16 ohm. I like to use the Mesa Boogie 08, which are Mesa Boogie custom speakers. Let's check this one out. I dig that one. The 16 ohm version is a lot brighter. In this case, I prefer the 8 ohm version. All their Marshall V30s. They're good, but they sound a little bit more vintage. And some orange V30s. All right, let's go to the next cab. Now, the next one that I'd like to try is the 2x12 Bogner oversized with V30s. It may not be perfectly suitable for 8-string tones, but I'd like to try it anyway because I do like how it sounds. It has a really big mid-range. That's definitely not bad. Pretty cool, but it won't be my first choice for 8-string tones. Let's see what else we have. The Bogner with the EVH is great for metal. In fact, it's one of my favorite cabs for metal, but it works very well with higher tuned stuff, regular 6-string type stuff. It's a bit too scooped sounding for my taste for 8-string tones, but I'm sure you could make it work. So here we have the diesel rear loaded with V30s. I like this one a lot. It's great for metal, rock, and anything in between. Let's try the 70 and 121 mix. Here we go. I love that one. It's really well balanced. Works great for 8-string tones. Let's move on. This one was surprising to me how well it works for metal and heavy tones. It's the Marshall checkerboard 4x12 with the H75 PR speaker. Let's try the 70 with the 121 again. It's a combo that I like to use. Yeah, the mid-range on that one sounds really good. I think this speaker works very well for a more low gain type, Marshall type tones, but it seems to work very well for metal as well. Very cool. Let's see what else we have here. The Engel, of course. I love this one. I like this one with the JS mix. All the later Ownhammer cabs have this mix. JS stands for John Simons, which is actually my name. I came up with the recipe for this mix, and I like how beefy it sounds. It has a lot of mids and quite some lows. Let's try this one. This is definitely one of my favorites for 8-string type tones and for metal in general. This one is also very cool. It's the Marshall Checkerboard 4x12 again, this time with a Lynchback speaker. Also the JS mix. Let's try this one. I'm really also enjoying that one. The mid-range is cool, and the balance seems very good too. Over here we have the Mesa from the upcoming Heavy Hitters collection. It's a new pack from Ownhammer that's going to be out very soon, and it's going to be amazing, especially for high gain players. It won't be limited to high gain players. I'm sure there's stuff in there that's going to be great for low gain, clean players, whatever, but it's amazing for metal. It's going to have 4 cabs, and each cab is going to have 3 different speaker types. So that's 12 different speaker options in total. Here we have the Mesa 4x12 with V30s. Again, the JS mix. This one fits in the mix very nicely. Let's check it out. Yep, I love this one. Most of the Heavy Hitters collection cabs are my favorite cabs now. Kevin from Ownhammer has done something really special there, and I'm sure you guys are going to love it. Let's try the H30 in the same cab, also the JS mix. Also sounding great for 8-string tones. Let's see what else we have here. There's too much stuff to try out, so I'm just going to have to make a selection here. The Mesa oversized V60 is also pretty good, I think. Let's give it a go. Sounds good to me. Let's also try the V70 speaker in that cab. Cool. This one is also from the Heavy Hitters collection. It's the third speaker option in the Mesa cabinet. It's a G80, also the JS mix. I know this speaker is going to work very well for lead stuff, but I wonder if it sounds good for 8-string rhythms as well. Let's try. I also love the mid-range on that one. We can also give the diesel front-loaded a go, which is also from the Heavy Hitters collection. We have it here. Let's start off with the JS mix. I really love the diesel speakers. Great character. You can't go wrong with V30s. Now, this one is quite new. It hasn't been released as of yet. It's a 2x12 orange cab, and the mid-range on this one is just insane. I'm curious to see how this sounds with the 8-string. Let's start off with the V30 option and the JS mix. I'm really enjoying the sounds coming out of this cab. Let's try a different mix. This is easily becoming one of my favorite cabs right now. Let's try the V30 and M25 blend. Very good. The M25 JS. cab is magical. I really like it. So I think at the moment my favorite pick is either the 2x12 orange or the angle. Let's go back to the angle. Let's compare this to the orange. I like this one a lot. Both the orange and angle seem perfect. In fact, I think all the cabs we tried could work very well for 8-string tones. They're just different flavors to choose from. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you'd like to follow us, please hit subscribe and go to facebook.com/sonicdrivestudio to stay up to date. Thanks for watching.